Good morning, everybody. How are you doing today? So let's start our lecture today. And according to our schedule and our slide, we are on the last quarter of this course content. Okay. So we have completed almost all of the basic foundations of programming. Okay, but we have one thing left, that is array. Okay, so maybe this week and next week we will discuss array. Next Friday is your test, right? I already passed a study guide on D2L. Everybody got it? Okay, so on your test you will have a major portion with class and object and constructor development, and another section maybe 40%, 30 to 40% of one-dimensional array that we will discuss this week and next week. So our slide is here. So if you downloaded this slide a while ago, so please re-download it again. Okay, so there are some updates here. So this is an interesting and useful topic, and I believe you should full interest. And if you do practice, then you will get more interest on it, I believe. So everybody see that? Okay, so the module 7 part 1, let us start with this module. So this is all about a one-dimensional array. Okay, a simple topic, but there are only few confusing points. I will highlight the confusing points in array, but everything should be simple. Okay, so at this point I believe everybody is familiar with how to use variable, right? How to use a variable to hold. Why do we use a variable? We use a variable to hold data, right? So according to data type, nature of the data, we use data type. So in order to declare a variable, we in most languages we declare the type first and then variable name. But in pseudocode, when you say create, that means we mean that it is creating an appropriate type with an appropriate type. So if we say create number one, and then we say assign back arrow 10, that means we are creating a variable number 1 and assigning value 10 to that variable number 1, right? So what happens when you declare a variable? Recall that when you declare a variable, it takes a memory space. It is a name. A variable is a name. In other way, a variable is a name of a memory location. That maybe at the beginning of this course I told you that name of variable. For instance, there are some offices or buildings in this world, or some places that are known by multiple ways. For instance, the White House, it has its physical address, right? But in addition to that, people know it by White House. If you do a Google search by White House, it will show you the direction. You don't need to put physical address. So it's memory, and a variable is a name of a memory location. So we can access the content of that memory location by two ways: by the address of that memory location, or just by the name of that place. For instance, we can drive through White House or in a place by two ways. If you do Google search by giving the physical address of White House, or just writing the word White House, I think it will take us there. So why do we call this a variable? Because these in two ways, that this variable takes value that can be changed. Time to time it can take different value, any value. And also this variable takes memory place. These variables take memory place in different position. Wherever it finds a place, it takes a position over there. For instance, while you are sitting on these benches on a table, there is no restriction that you will sit on this place. So wherever you find a place, an empty space, you sit over there, right? Same thing for variable. Okay, so then we know how to assign value to a variable and how to print that value, how to use that value. This is very simple. But in our previous programs, we handled with only a few variables. Our programs were only with a few variables, right? But for instance, like this program, if it is a part of a program that we have only 5 variables over here, variable 1 to 5, then we can easily, if we have a few variables, we can easily assign their values and we can do arithmetic or any operations and we can do print operation. But think about a situation if we have huge number of variables. Okay, for instance, if we want to store census data, like there are millions people, many millions people in the country, right? So if you want to store almost many variables for say person data, name, gender, age, date of birth, address, previous addresses, income, friends. For instance, maybe we may have 30 or 40 to 50 variables for each person in order to keep his record, right? So think about situation if a country has only 1 million people and if we want to hold or store the entire data for 1 million people, like if a person needs 50 variables to hold the data, then there will be 50 million variables, right? It is difficult to maintain those variables with 50 million different names, and also those variables will take memory place in scattered ways wherever they find any position. So it is also difficult to access those variables from memory position. And think about a real life situation. If we go to a store like Walmart, we usually see the items are organized in shelf and different sections have different materials like grocery, automotive, toys, right, medicine. But think about a situation if all the items were randomly put in a store, how difficult it would be to find our desired items, right? Luckily we may find an item at the first place, but there is a possibility that it would take hours after hours to find our items, right? For a computer, if we have randomly generated or for instance assigned variables, it will not take hours after hours, but it will take milliseconds, few milliseconds. But for each variable it takes a few milliseconds. Think about how much time it will take for accessing a census data with 50,000 or 50 million variables, right? So in order to resolve that issue, we use array in our program. In all languages, we have array. The concept of an array is that array holds several values of same type several variables data. Okay, an array holds homogeneous or same type data. Okay, so the concept of array came from it's called in some languages it's called list. Array or list came from the concept of a set. We know the definition of a set, right? A set is a collection of similar objects, right? We say set of pencils, set of books, set of computers, set of friends, set of names, right? So a set contains pretty similar data, and there is a significant difference between a set and a list. Can anyone please tell me the difference between a set and a list? In a real life, we also make a list. When you go for shopping, we make a list, right?
It's not categorized. It's just
Okay. And we also familiar with set from the very beginning. You worked with when you went to elementary school, to middle, to high school, you worked with set, right? Okay. The difference between a set and a list, main difference is that a set cannot contain duplicate value. One element one time only. But a list can contain duplicate value. Okay. So if you want to say 5 milk, let's milk. Okay. So the concept of array came from list. Okay, a list contains same kind of items. It can hold multiple items, same item multiple times. So the array can. Okay. So use of array, we want to use array to make our programming and problem solving easier. We can avoid to use array, but if we use array, then it will be easy to access our variables and handle our variables, and our program will be faster. Okay, a list is an array is linear. That means all of the elements stay together one after another serially. Okay, but there are some limitations of an array. One of the limitations is that an array is static. Once we define an array with the size, when we define an array, we need to define with its size. Like for instance, we say create my array with size 5. What if I want to make 50? So if I make 50, then I will be able to hold only 50 values to this array. If I want to make 7, if I say create my array, okay, with 7 size or length, then it will be able to hold only 7 elements. Okay. So there is a possible problem is that, for instance, if I thought that I will use an array with 7 elements, then if I declare this way, then my program execution time, if I have 8 elements, okay, I will not be able 8 or 10 elements. I will not be able to hold the additional element that are more than 7. Okay. So during my program execution time, I cannot change this. We cannot change this. This is the static nature of an array. There is a limitation. On the other way, if we thought that I would have variable, like if I declare an array like this, 7 million, for instance, with size. Okay, but ultimately you have only 100 element. Then the other places will be misused. So that is another possibility so these are the limitations of array. So in order to resolve that array, in modern programming languages, there is a way to declare dynamic array, like linked list or array list or stack or queue. In many languages have a built-in linked list, built-in array, we say array list. You will learn how to declare or how to use a dynamic array like array list in your next course if you take 1322 with us. Okay, you will learn how to create a dynamic list. A dynamic list or a dynamic array can be shrink or expanded while program is executing. So there is less possibility to misuse or shortage of array size. But in our program we will discuss how to create a static array. Okay, that the array, clearly a static array is a complex data type, but its implementation is easy. Only a few rules and there are few restrictions. We will go through this. So in this slide, in this module, there are about, I see 76 slides, but in our first lecture, let us try, I will go through half of this. It's easy, okay? Give attention, then you will understand this. Okay, so if we declare an array like similarly like this 7. So here I'm creating an array. This is a pseudocode format. Array name is my name. How do I know that this is an array? So whenever we see something, a name followed by a square bracket, then that is an array. So we learn that whenever we see something followed by a parenthesis, then that is a method or function, right? We learned that. So the difference between to understand a method or an array is that we will see the bracket. In most languages we will use third bracket, it's called third bracket or bracket, square bracket, in order to declare or use an array. So whenever you say create in pseudocode, then you will know that this we are creating a new array with an appropriate data type. But in most languages we have to use data type over here in program implementation. So here I am declaring an array with size 7. So that will happen, what will happen in it, it will take a memory space with 7 slots. One thing we need to remember that for all arrays in almost all programming languages, only a few exceptions, okay, all arrays start with 0 index. This is called index is 0. This is 0th index. Okay, so in order to have an array with 7 size 7 cell, we give the cell number starting from 0 to 6 will be 7 cell. Okay, as a human being we start counting from 1. We say 1 2 3 4 5 6 7, but all electronic devices like computers, calculators, they start counting from 0. There are some advantages of counting from 0 instead of counting from 1. Okay, for instance, let me see if I can show you something. Okay, if I have only one switch or symbol like X, okay, so if I start counting from 1, how many different symbol I can show? Only one, right? If I have only one light, for instance, this X is a light or switch. If I start counting from 1, and how many in binary format? I can show 2 if I start from 0. If I say 0, then I can start from 0, then I can show 0 and 1. This 0 equal to 0 or off, or 1 is 1 or light 1, right? So for one light I can show 2 to the power 1 equal to 2 different signals, 2 different symbols, right, or signal. If I have one more light, if I add one more light or one more switch, then what can I do? I can say 0 0, like 0 1 1 0. I have 4 different combination. I may have 4 different combination. Okay, so these are combination like 0 0 0 1 1 0 1 1. So if I have 2 lights, then I can 2 bits or lights, then I can give in binary system 2 to the power 2 equal to 4 different, I'm sorry, I can give 4 different symbol. So if I add one more switch, okay, then I will have 8 combinations. I will have 8 different combinations like this, and all 4, the remaining 4 I can get 1 0 0, sorry, 0 1 1 0 and 1 1. So if I have 3 switches, then I can give 8 different combination. So similarly, if I have 10 switches, then I can give 2 to the power 10 equal to how many? 2 to the power 10 equal to 1024. Okay, sorry. So if I add one more signal, one more switch, then 2 to the power 11 will be 2048. So this is why nowadays you see the memory size of electronic devices like phone and the computer is raising double, right? 2 gigabyte, then 4 gigabyte, 8 gigabyte, 16 gigabyte, 32 gigabyte, then 64 gigabyte, 124, then like this way. So in order to utilize these facilities, so in all electronic devices we start counting from 0. So this is the thing we need to remember, that when we access an array we must start from counting 0. So these are the called index. Okay, so this is index 0 1 2 to 6. So these are called index. In plural is indices. In British language we say indexes. Okay, so this is the tricky thing. We need to remember that when we create an array, then we need to give it size. Okay, and when we access this, we need to access the array. All array element will have a common name but with different indexes. Indices. Okay, the first index is 0 and the last index is equal to size minus 1. So if my size is 7, the last index will be 7 minus 1 equal to 6. And this is the mistake that many people do, especially when we do programming for the beginner do this mistake. Okay, so give attention here that our array indexes start from 0 and ends 1 minus 1 less than the length. Okay, so that how do we declare in pseudocode? We will declare an array like this. And how do I say that? How do I know that this is an array? Just by looking this square bracket. Okay, okay, and in programming languages like C# and C++, C# and Java, we use most similar fashion like this: int, and we will give a square bracket, this size is empty, and we will give the name of the array, and we will use equal to new int 5. So this means we are declaring an integer array, integer type array. Name is my name, my array, and that will have maximum 5 elements. The elements will be 0 to 4 element indexes will be. Okay, and this is a way. So in this way, if we declare an array, so this my array, all of the 5 slots initially will be 0, blank. It will not be blank in memory, but it will be 0. But there is another way. If we later we can assign those each of the elements. Okay, but I will show you soon how do we assign. But there is a way that while we declare an array, so we can say int then array symbol. Okay, then my array equal to this. We can assign values to this array, and in this case the default the size will be 5, since we are defining 5 values. The size will be 5. So here one thing remember, that this sign square bracket is actually part of the type. Okay, but in some books you will see like this with a space in between type and array name, but in some books or somewhere you may find like this way, just before the array name. In some book or some places in some programs you may see this like I cannot cut it. Okay, in some languages you may see like this right after the name, array name, but this is the appropriate, this is actually the appropriate one, whatever I do have here. Okay, this array symbol is a part of type, not part of name, array name. Okay, okay, but C++ has a different symbol, a little bit different. You see that in C++ we will say just data type, then followed by the array name, followed by square bracket. Within the square bracket we will give size. So this is people who are taking C++ is an easier way than Java, and we can do in similar ways. Say for instance here int my array, so I is like this, I'm giving 5. Okay, so I'm giving 5 size in C++, and then I'm assigning 5 values over here, for instance. But if I give size more than 5, for instance 15, then it will happen the first 5 elements will be assigned by these values, and the remaining elements will be assigned by 0. Okay, so here remaining 10 elements will be assigned by 0 initially, because my array size is 15 over here, right? But I am assigning how many values I am giving? 5 values here, right? These 5 values will go the beginning 5, and the remaining 10 will be 0.
So after 50.
Huh?
After 50.
Yes, after 50, the remaining, after 5 elements. Okay, the remaining 10, right? We have 15, the remaining 10 will be 0. Okay, accessing array elements is very simple, but like one thing we need to remember, that we will use index. Okay, but we cannot, for instance, okay, so an array, if we have an array, we have to declare with a type, data type. Okay, the type be homogeneous. Homogeneous means type must be in similar group or siblings. Like for instance, for integer, we can have, what are the siblings of integer data types? There are 4 siblings of integers, right? Integer, short, long, byte, right? These are the siblings, and then float and doubles are siblings, right? They are similar type. So here we are assigning client is by the my array. What is the element number? Which element I will get it from here with index 4?
0 to 3.
We will get 5th element. Here when you give the index 0, because index start with 0. The first element has index 0, second element is index 1, third element is index 2, fourth element is index 3, and fifth element has index 4. Okay, there is some confusing thing. That is the norm. Okay, remember that when you say 4 index over here, the element that we are getting 5th element from the top, because top element has index 0. Voila is okay. Okay, so here if we say array, my array index with index at index 3, okay, if we put 12 over here, but that means if we assign the value of my array 3 by 12, that this is the index 0, the 1, 2 and third elements, third index, that is the fourth element, will be 12. Okay, but one thing that remember that might be confusing, we cannot do right this way. This is a wrong. We cannot say my array equal to 12, because my array is a collection. Okay, my array you cannot access the whole array by name. Okay, we have to go by element, each of the cell or indexes. This is a common error for new students or new programmers. Okay, please remember this, that we cannot access an array by its own name. Okay, then if you understand this, whatever I discussed so far, then it is easy to do an operation for an array. So let us see. If we create an array, my array with size 5, then what will be our elements? So these elements, we will have 5 elements starting from index 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So whatever we say, that if we say my array with index 0 equal to 10, 1 equal to 20, 30, 40, 50, like this way. We can do this way. Okay, so we can access each of the node, each of the elements with index number of an array. We can do it individually, but if we know how to use for loop, we can do that easily. Okay, so here in C++ or C# format, so if say my array, which element we will get here from here? Second element, right? If we say index 1, then we will see the second element. This is the confusing thing, but please remember it and then you will be used to. Okay, so what is the element number from here? If we say my array with index 3, fourth element. Okay, so if we say fourth element equal to 42, then if we print fourth element, then whatever value will be printing 42. So we can print directly with index number of an array, or we can assign the array index, array element to another same kind variable, and we can access that or print that. Is not tricky, it's very simple. Anyone has any questions so far? Yes.
So can you explain the difference between initializing it and then calling it? Because that's the only difference I see. You initialize it.
Okay, that is a good question. Okay, good question. So whenever you see here on the right side or whoever side, whenever you see in programming language perspective, okay, so in pseudocode perspective, when you say create, that is initializing, you understand, right? So but programming perspective, whenever you say without data type, then that is using. But whenever you see somewhere with data type, for instance int or somewhere, whenever you say an array with its data type, then that is a creation. Okay, so we will see that. Okay, so here we do not have any data type, right, on the right side, so that is using. We are indexing second element. Yeah, but if I say like this, if I could say like this, so that means that we are declaring an array, my array, with size equal to 1. No, with size equal to 1. With size equal to 1.
But it only has an index of 0, right?
No, I just understand. So when we declare an array like this way, so if I have only this part, so that means we are declaring an integer type array with size 1.
Right. So if it was 5, it was 0 through 4. If it was 5, right?
Sorry?
When it was 5.
When you say
0
5.
through 4.
So indices are 0 to 5, 0 to 4.
Right. And if it was 1, the index would be 0.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I understand this. So if I have like an array, I declare an array with size 1, that only will have only one index, right? That will be 0. So how do I know that this is I'm accessing an element or declaring an array? So if I with the data type, okay? If I see data type with it, then I'm declaring an array. If I do not see data type, then I'm just accessing element. A good question, thank you. So in pseudocode we will see how if we say create, then we are creating an array, okay? But for instance, if I do not have in C++, I would say like int, same thing. That means I have data type here, right? I am creating an array. But in pseudocode we will write create. Okay? And you see that when we create an array, this is the size of the array, right? It must be an integer number. It must be an integer number. Its size cannot be fractional. I cannot create an array with size 2.5, 2.5. Okay? So once we create an array, then we will start with index. So if I say my array, okay, 5. So how many indices we do have? We have 4 indices, right? So what are those indices? How do we access those 5 elements? My array elements will be my array 0, and then my array 1, my array 2, my array 3, and what will be the last one? 4. Do I have 5? No. Remember that is the mistake. Sometimes it is the mistake that I cannot have this, but not my array 5. We cannot have my array 5 element because we are starting from 0th index. This is the like few tricky or confusing things I already discussed. Okay, if you remember that array start with index 0 and end the index end with, if I have size n, the last one will be n minus 1. Anyone has any questions so far? Yes.
So you said that you can have a double array and still put floats in it, like with the homogeneous.
If I declare an array with double type, then I can put float type value on in it. Because for double and float there are some overlapping. Okay, float type is a subset of double type. Right? Okay. You have a question? So everybody is good? So let us see. Okay, so in our next lecture we will show, if I have time then today or next lecture we will see how to access their elements. It is very easy if you know for loop. Okay, so but if you forget how to use for loop, before you come to next lecture, please look back, review your for loop. Okay, so we will use for loop a lot to access the elements. I'm not done yet, I have few more minutes, right? Okay, so array index start with 0 and it goes all the way in to the last element has index with, if I have 5 over here, then you will have last index will have 5 minus 1, 4, right? Okay. So let us see some pictures. If you give attention for the next 5 minutes, you will understand everything. Okay, so it's very simple. For instance, we create an array named my array. Okay, by the way, I can give any name of my array as long as I do not have any previous name of a variable of same type, like a variable, any name I can give. So my array is size 5. So then I remember that I will have index from 0 to 4. Okay, so then if I assign array I by 42, okay, and if I do through a for loop, what will happen? Let us see some slides. So initially I am creating an array, my array, that with size 5, so that will have indices 0 to 4, right? So initially if I create an array without assigning any value, then all values will be by default 0. So this is why index 0 has my array that has first element 0, all elements are 0. So now if when I equal to 0, then if I say my arrow 0 equal to 42, then it will happen. So this is my 0th, is just write indication 0. Then if I say my arrow 0 equal to 42, then 42 will be here, first position, right? So then it will go back to the second time loop again. It will check for I equal to 0 to 4. So this time I will be 1, right? I will be 1. And when I equal to 1, then my array 1 will be 1 is position here, and my array 1 will be 42, right? Okay, and again, if for the next statement, it will go to the loop again, for loop again, right? At this position, I will be 2, okay, and then my array 2 will be this location, and if I say my array with index 2, then 42, then 42 will come on this location. And at this point, in the next phase, it will go back to the for loop, and with I will be 3, and my array 3 will be pointed. And then if we say my array 3 equal to 42, it will go there, 42 will be there. And in the last phase, it will go back again to the for loop, and I will be here 4, right? So the my array 4 will be the last position, okay? And if I say my array 4 equal to 42, then the 42 will be assigned the last position, and at this position again this will come here, but at this point for loop will be false, right? I will be 5, so for loop will be false. So then my loop will be ended. That's it. So we can go through the for loop last point manually, or in most languages there is a way to find the length of an array. Okay, so in Java we have length method, and C# has a length attribute. Okay, in C++ has also length method, we can count length. Some languages has size, like Python says size, Kotlin says size method. Okay, so whenever it's using size or length, whatever we use, by using size or length, we can find that how it will be the my maximum length, okay, of an array. So when we find the maximum length, when we find the length of an array, so then we have to traverse through the length minus 1, and this is the very critical point. Many people do mistake over here, and in many programs fails due to this mistake. One of the things, for instance, if I have my length method over here, I have to go length minus 1. So you see the if length minus 1. So in for loop we use less than sign but without equal sign. So here give attention please on one thing that you need to give attention. You say length while for I equal to 0, that means starting index 0, and I less than, this is my data underscore storage is my array name, dot length. So you see that less than dot length means it's -1, right? So if I say equal over here, then I need to give, must give -1 over here. So remember that this, if I give equal, then equal sign, then I must need to use -1. But people usually do, they do not give -1. So they, what they do, they give only less than sign, not equal sign. So at this point, if you do like less or equal length, then it will overflow. Your program will give you an error. So remember that this is the thing. We must use less than, not equal, less or equal sign. Okay, we are half of the way. In our next lecture, we will see how to traverse an array. Once we can traverse an array element, it will be easy for us to do any arithmetic operation, for instance adding all of the elements, finding average, mean, median, or search for an element. We will learn in next lecture. Okay, thank you so much. Anyone has any questions so far?
That's gonna be next Friday.
Yes.